Alright, so with this video we are trying to isolate or get rid of the background and just isolate the figure itself, the image. My favorite way to do that is using Magic Wand. I increase the tolerance, that's the pixel tolerance. It goes about a range of 20 within the pixels that I actually selected, that point sample. If the point sample is yellow, it'll select 20 pixels of difference between that yellow so I can see that it's selecting all the rest of the yellow pixels. This gray is different than the other gray, so it's outside of that range. So I like this range. It worked out pretty well. I'm going to press Shift, and look what it does up here. When I press Shift, it adds a plus there, and it also changes the other menu up here and says Add to the selection. I'm going to add to the selection here and here, and now I've got a pretty good selection of the background. You can do one of two things. You can either here delete the pixels, alright? Or if you wanted to keep that background, select the inverse of that, and then copy and paste. Now remember to paste into place. Edit, paste special, paste into place. That's Shift, Control V. You're going to use that a lot. Remember that. Paste in place. Shift, Control V. And that pastes the pixels that I just selected, the inverse of them, and put them into another layer. I feel good about that. There's one way. That is using the Magic Wand. There's another way. You can use the Quick Selection tools. Quick Selection tool is like using a paintbrush, and it paints different areas. Because these are all very similarly pixel or similar colors, it may not work that well. It may work on certain parts, but see, it's kind of spreading out to the entire edges. So I'm not going to use that. It didn't work that well. Sometimes it can work well, but not all the time. Alright, so it's not going to work. I can't use that. Control D deselects. There's also the Lasso tool. I use this to get a really rough outline if I'm going to be doing this, like a rough job, because it's just like drawing with a pencil, but it gives me a rough selection, and then I can go in there closer and say I wanted to add this in here. I'd hold Shift. I'm going to add the part where the ear is. Alt is minus, so I can minus from the selection here, but you have to close off the shape that you're minusing, just like in Illustrator. Close off the path. Alright, and then I'm minusing that out. I can add, Shift, and then you can get a really kind of good thing. Shift, and then minus is Alt, subtracting from it. The other way is to use the Polygonal Lasso tool. This is one that I use a lot, especially when I'm using with straight lines, and it's a quick and easy method. I'm going to hold Shift and add to this selection, so I'm going to go around the shoulder. And what it is a series of just straight lines, like we're cutting with scissors or with an X-Acto knife. You have to kind of go back to the beginning of your line, and you'll see a circle show up. That means we're closing off that shape. Or adding to it, and just double click over here and it'll close off the shape. You see that, how it kind of closed it off? I'm using this space bar to move around, and hold, Shift to the hand tool really quick and move around, and then work around the edges. And this is how I work with Photoshop a lot. I'll zoom in and I'll hold the space bar and kind of zoom around and push my page around because I want to get good parts. Okay, Shift, double click with the Lasso tool. Now I've included all that area. The last part, that last one that I'm going to show you, the last Lasso tool, which is a good one, is the magnetic. Alright, magnetic, I'm going to do all on its own. Excuse me, going back. Plus, Shift. Alright, space bar. Magnetic Lasso, Control D. I'm going to deselect all this. Magnetic Lasso, it kind of, it likes to find those edges and kind of paint around those edges. Do you see that? It's almost like I have a thread that is trying to, and I'm clicking intermittently. It's trying to kind of find where the pixels are different. You'll have to work with it a little bit. And what it is it's making a path around here. So if I zoom out, and I go quickly around the edges, you can kind of draw a good, quick selection around here. It's actually doing a pretty decent job. It doesn't do a good job around fine details, but it does a pretty decent job. See, it kind of messed up over there, but if you go back to the beginning and you click, there's your selection. So that's another way to make a selection. I would now, and don't be afraid to use more than one selection. That's the other key to this. Use each selection for its strength. Magic Wand does a good job of selecting similarly colored pixels. Maybe I use that. Select the inverse and then go back in there with the lasso tool, or go back in there with magnetic, or with the polygonal lasso tool. Or there's one last thing which is called the quick mask. Will, you learned about this one. So quick mask mode. When I edit in quick mask mode, it's a brush, and the red area is the area that is not going to be the selection. Okay. So we would go back in here with an eraser tool and we say, hey, I'm going to erase around this edge. Here, erase around this edge, and bear with me. So I got the hair in there. I use the magnetic lasso tool to get the general shape, and now I can kind of get the fine details with this. And when I turn off the quick mask mode, I want to have you show it in all its glory. You turn off the quick mask mode, and it turns it into a selection. So we're using a paintbrush to create the selection. Does that make sense? All right, those are the several different ways that you can make a selection. The key of this is to select out your figure, or to select out and delete your background.